10:05 in the morning, Monday, January 24th, 2022, north of Bogotá, Colombia. A black time trial bike is moving down a Colombian highway at around 60 kilometers per hour. The rider is folded into the most aggressive aerodynamic position the sport has ever invented. Head down, forearms parallel to the ground. His eyes are on the road, but only a meter or two directly under his front wheel. He cannot see what is happening 80 meters in front of him. An intermunicipal bus has stopped in the middle of the lane to let one passenger get off. 8 seconds later, his bike will be embedded in the back panel of that bus. Not crashed against. Embedded. The frame disappears into the bodywork like a knife into bread. The rider is 25 years old. His name is Egan Bernal. He is the reigning champion of the Giro d'Italia. He is the third youngest winner of the Tour de France in history. And in the next 48 hours, doctors will tell him he has a 95% chance of never walking again. What we are about to dissect is one of the most extreme injury cases in modern professional sport. So unusual, it has been published in a peer-reviewed medical journal. A case where, by every metric that matters in trauma medicine, this man should not be standing today. And yet, 4 years later, Egan Bernal stands at the start line of the Giro d'Italia. Not as a guest, not as a sentimental tribute, as a co-leader of one of the most powerful teams in cycling. So here's the question that drives the next 9 minutes. How does a body that broke roughly 20 bones in 8 seconds come back to race the highest level of endurance sport in the world? Let me start with the road. The Bogotá to Tunja highway is not Alpe di Huez. It is not a famous descent or a rain-slick pass in the Pyrenees. It is a flat, straight stretch of Colombian motorway that Egan Bernal has trained on probably 1,000 times. He grew up about 30 minutes from this spot, in a city called Zipaquirá. Remember that name. It matters more than you think. That morning he was riding with his Ineos Grenadiers teammates. Standard time trial training. Behind support cars. In a line. Holding the most aerodynamic position the sport allows. And that position is the first piece of physics we need to talk about. Modern time trial bikes are optimized for one single thing. Minimum air resistance. To achieve that, the rider folds forward almost completely flat. The aerodynamic gain is real, maybe 5 to 10% at race speed. But there is a cost hiding in plain sight. You cannot see far in front of you. His own teammate Tom Pidcock said it explicitly after the crash. Positions had become so extreme, in his words, that you do not necessarily see where you are going. By the time Bernal's brain registered the bus stopped in his lane, physics had already taken over from human reaction. Now here is where the medicine gets serious. The hospital that treated him eventually published this case in a peer-reviewed orthopedic journal. So we are not guessing. First, the spine. He fractured the small bony peg at the top of his neck that the skull rotates around. He fractured 2 vertebrae in the middle of his upper back and completely dislocated the joint between them. The ligaments holding those vertebrae together were torn apart. A herniated disc was pushing toward his spinal cord. Here is the brutal part of spinal medicine. When you fracture and dislocate vertebrae in this region, the published rate of complete paralysis from the waist down is above 80%. The spinal canal is narrow. The blood supply is precarious. Even a small compromise tends to destroy nerve function permanently. So why does Egan Bernal walk today? Because the way his bones broke actually opened the canal up rather than crushing it. A few millimeters of bone geometry, in a different direction, and we are not having this conversation. He would be in a wheelchair. Now the chest. 11 broken ribs. Both lungs collapsed. Severe bruising on both lungs. He needed drains pushed between his ribs to evacuate air so his lungs could re-expand. Then the right leg. The femur, the largest bone in the human body, broken into multiple pieces. An open, shattered kneecap with a wound exposing bone fragments and active bleeding. Surgeons rebuilt it with a screw, metal wires, and surgical tension bands. Add a broken hand, fractures to teeth and jaw. The cumulative score in trauma medicine is called the injury severity score. A score of 16 is the threshold of high mortality risk. The published average in series of sports-related severe trauma is about 23. Egan Bernal scored 41. Pause for a moment. Because behind every line of that medical chart, there are people. His mother, Flor Marina Gomez, was undergoing chemotherapy for breast cancer at exactly the same time her son was in intensive care. Two parallel medical battles, two separate hospitals. She later called the experience a mutual rebirth. His partner, Maria Fernanda Motas, was at his bedside every day. And from that bedside, in his first public message, Egan Bernal posted a photo and ended with the line the cycling world has not forgotten. I am back, and let us rock. Now to the part this channel exists for, the physiology of what comes next. Because surviving surgery is one thing. Coming back to race is another. When a Tour de France winner's body suddenly stops moving for 2 months, the cardiovascular system is the first thing to fall apart. Maximum oxygen uptake, what scientists call VO2 max, drops about 7% in 3 weeks. By 8 weeks, 16%. The amount of blood pumped per heartbeat falls. The left chamber of the heart literally remodels itself smaller, by up to 20% in just a few weeks. Then comes the engine inside the muscle. The cellular structures called mitochondria are even more sensitive than the heart. Half the gains an athlete spent years building can vanish in a single week of inactivity. After about 5 weeks, they are essentially gone. And weeks of retraining barely begin to bring them back. And then there is the leg. The inner thigh muscle that stabilizes the kneecap through every pedal stroke is critical for cyclists. Bernal did not just lose muscle bulk. He had a kneecap that was open and shattered, then rebuilt with hardware. His right leg was, mechanically, no longer the same leg that won the Tour de France. So 3 months after the crash, the rough math looked like this. VO2 max down up to 20%. Heart muscle smaller. Cellular engine cut in half. Quadriceps weakened by 1/3. Both lungs scarred. Spine bolted across 6 vertebrae. That is the body that, just 7 months later, lined up at the Tour of Denmark and finished the race. Has anyone in cycling history ever come back from a catastrophe like this? The answer is yes. The answer is also no. And the two precedents tell you everything about why what is happening at this Giro is genuinely unpredictable. April 1987. Greg LeMond, the reigning Tour de France champion, is on a turkey hunt in California. His brother-in-law accidentally fires a shotgun. 60 lead pellets pepper LeMond's back, chest, and legs. He loses almost 3/4 of his blood volume on the field. A police helicopter happens to be in the area. Without it, he dies. He still carries roughly 25 to 30 pellets in his body today. He misses the '87 Tour. He misses the '88 Tour. And then in 1989, Greg LeMond wins the Tour de France by 8 seconds over Laurent Fignon. The smallest margin in the history of the race. Near fatal accident. Long absence. Return to the absolute top. June 12, 2019. Chris Froome, 4-time Tour de France winner, is doing a course inspection of a time trial. Wind catches his front wheel. He hits a wall at 54 kilometers per hour. Right femur, elbow, hip, sternum, several ribs, a neck vertebra, lung damage. Despite world-class medical care and the resources of one of the wealthiest teams in cycling, Chris Froome has never returned to his pre-crash level. He is a presence in the peloton. He is not a contender. The ceiling never reset. So which one is Egan Bernal, LeMond, or Froome? 2023. He rode the Tour de France as a helper for his teammates. He finished. He was not a factor on the climbs. In interviews that year, he talked about having to relearn how to brush his teeth. 2024 was when something shifted. 3rd overall at the Tour of Catalonia, 4th at the Tour of Switzerland, 2nd to Jonas Vingegaard on a brutal mountaintop stage in Spain. 2025, Colombian national time trial and road race champion. Both titles won on his home roads in Zipaquirá. And later that year at the Tour of Spain, a mountaintop stage win. His first international victory since the Giro in 2021. That is not a helper anymore. That is a Grand Tour stage winner. But 2026 did not start clean. A knee injury. 3 weeks completely off the bike. Several major races missed. He went home to Colombia, to Zipaquirá, to altitude. And this is where Zipaquirá becomes critical, where the science loops back into the story. Zipaquirá sits at 2,650 meters above sea level, one of the highest mid-sized cities in the world. Egan Bernal grew up there. His blood and his lungs developed at altitude. Studies on Colombian cyclists born and trained at 2,500 meters or higher show measurably higher levels of hemoglobin, the molecule that carries oxygen in the blood, compared to lowland-born athletes. That advantage does not disappear in adulthood. It persists. So when injury and detraining wipe out plasma volume and cardiac output, an altitude-native body has a slightly higher ceiling to climb back toward. For a rider clawing back oxygen transport after a punctured lung and bilateral lung bruising, that head start might be the entire difference. He came back at the Tour of the Alps in April. He helped teammate Thymen Arensman to 2nd place overall. He finished 3rd on a key mountain stage behind Tom Pidcock. His team director told the press Bernal was very close to his best level again, and that the team believed he could fight for the Giro podium. So here's the real question. Should we be watching this Giro as a sentimental story? A farewell tour for a fragile former champion? Or as something stranger and harder to categorize? Vingegaard is the favorite. That is settled. Bernal sits below him in the betting markets. He will lose minutes in the time trial. That is just the truth. But the route has 7 mountaintop finishes. Almost 50,000 meters of cumulative climbing. Back-to-back-to-back days in the Dolomites, where what matters is not your fresh state peak power, but your durability. Your ability to hold high output after 4 hours of work, after 3 weeks of accumulated fatigue. And on durability, Egan Bernal has, for 4 years, been auditioning. Not in a laboratory, on the road, in his own body, against his own broken history. He is not the rider who won the Tour at 22. That rider is gone. The crash took him. What remains is a different athlete. Lighter, probably less explosive, but carrying inside him something the medical literature can describe but cannot fully explain. A body that survived a trauma score of 41, walked again, raced again, and won again. If he makes the podium in Rome, it will not be a miracle. It will be the most thoroughly documented, unlikely outcome in the modern history of cycling. And if he does not, that is also fine, because the real story was never going to be the result. The real story is that, 4 years and 4 months after lying in an intensive care bed outside Bogotá, with his thoracic spine held together by titanium, Egan Bernal rolls out of a start house alongside the best riders in the world. That ride is already the result. I am Sebastian, from the Injury Breakdown. If this kind of physiology meets human story is what you came here for, you are going to want to watch what I just dropped on Paul Seixas. VO2 max, the number that should terrify Pogačar. I break down the real physiology behind the most exciting talent cycling has seen in a decade. His estimated VO2 max. Why his height actually works in his favor on steep climbs. The Indurain parallel nobody is drawing. And what the lactate science tells us about that attack that shattered the peloton. It is on screen now. I will see you there.